It's story number 43 time. Once again, story time is here. My name is Phil, and you're listening to The Lip. Yes, it is story number 43 today. I probably say this nearly every time since I've done my 20th story episode. I can't believe I've got this many stories to tell. But of course, if you live long enough, you're only going to have a lot of stories to tell, right? I would think. I can tell you right now that this episode isn't going to be the normal breakdown where I have 3 different stories that I'm going to tell. It's kind of like one topic, but of that one topic, I'm going to tell you about a few different stories, if that makes any sense. I'm going to talk to you about my experiences and time working with and just traveling on the mass transit juggernaut in Philadelphia known as Septa, or when you break it down, it is called the Southeastern Pennsylvania Transportation Authority. Essentially, they run all the buses and trains that move in and around the city of Philadelphia and some of the other counties in the area. It's a pretty good chunk of territory that they run. And they've done a lot of good things to get people to where they need to be. They're reasonably reliable, especially considering what they do for the communities that they serve. And I'll have to admit that, well, being from New Jersey, public transportation, especially in the areas where I came from in Ocean County, wasn't necessarily stellar. For example, off of Route 9, you could be able to see a New Jersey Transit bus once every hour and a half to 2 hours. Not necessarily the most effective. Whereas Septa, at least, on normal working days, Monday through Friday, and even on the weekends, it's a little bit different, but not quite too much far off. But your normal Monday through Friday, you have a fairly regular 10-15 minute interval. And of course, as you get to rush hour, it becomes even faster sometimes. Try to get people to where they got to go. However, like anything, there's always stories that people have about everything. And today I'm going to talk to you about, again, my experiences working for a short time and riding on SEPTA's transportation juggernaut. But first, it's time to fill in the blanks. Now, you see, I'm recording this episode on November 4th, 2025. This happens to be a Tuesday, and it is Election Day. Now, normally I'm a little bit more hyped for Election Day because I really like it's terrible to put it like this, the entertainment aspect of election cycles. When you have a good race for a mayor or a governor or a president, it can be extraordinarily entertaining. Now, in New Jersey, there's a pretty good one going on for governor, but, well, since I'm no longer in New Jersey, it really doesn't affect me like it used to. Whereas, of course, here in Pennsylvania, there isn't any major gubernatorial race or mayoral races here in Philadelphia locally. There are a few races for, I believe it's district attorney and for a handful of judges. So it's really not so juicy, not quite as entertaining, and for me personally, not nearly as fun. But nevertheless, I will do my civic duty and I will vote. But it won't be the same. Just won't be the same. Not as fun. But that brings me to the fill in the blanks. knowing that it is election day and there isn't as juicy an electoral cycle going on, do I still have the passion for voting this cycle? The answer is, well, yes. That is the line that gets filled in. It's filled in with yes. I still have the passion for voting. Still do, because regardless, you still got to do it. You do. Because it keeps you a part of the process. Whether the process is big and grandiose as president, or, like I said, small as, say, district attorney or a handful of judges, or even a public question. And those are really important. Still got to vote, and that's why you do it. But that's why I said I'm still hyped up about going to vote, even for that. So once again, the question is, do I still have that same energy, essentially, to go vote, even though there isn't a big race? And the blank is filled with, yes, I do. But now, without any further ado, I'm going to ring the bell, and we're going to start the main event. Of course, it's time for me to tell story number 43. This episode of story is going to be a fun chapter, I think, I hope, I anticipate. Because, like I said earlier, I'm going to be speaking on my experiences working with and traveling on the Southeastern Pennsylvania Transportation Authority, more commonly and affectionately known as Septa in these parts of Pennsylvania and Philadelphia. Well, where do we begin? Do we start with my experiences working with them, or my experiences traveling on them? Or maybe I'll just mix it up. That's what I'll do. I'll mix it up. I'll tell you something that happened when I was working for them, and then I'll tell you something that happened when I was simply traveling on them. And where are we going to go first? We're going to go with working or traveling. Working or traveling. Let's see. Some of these stories I may have told already, but I figure I want to essentially put them all together in one lump sum, because I think that it would be more interesting to just hear about my total and overall experience just in general, because, like I said, not everybody has worked for them and not everybody has even ridden on them. So I can give you a little bit of a taste of both on the aspect of the way it goes. I think I'll start with I'll start with one of my first trips on Septa. I have a story that I'm probably not going to tell you, because it's just, it's a story that I'm on YouTube. I highly doubt that they're going to want me to tell you this story. So let's just say, if you are interested in a story that I'm not going to tell on YouTube, you know where to find me. Check me out on Instagram, Philip Henderson 5102. Inbox me, and I'll tell you that story. But we'll go with one of my favorites, which was I was and a lot of these really good ones happen on the trains. This particular one was in it was on the elevated train line that they have. And my goodness, it was interesting, because me and my wife now, but girlfriend then, were on our way. Where are we going? It doesn't really matter. The point was, we were traveling on the train, and We had just got on, jumped into a car, we're ready to go. Train takes off. And there's I guess I can call him a gentleman from a certain point of view, sitting across from us. And there was nobody sitting next to him. Couldn't quite figure out why, because it was a little tight, but he had a lot of space. Didn't smell like he was homeless, but there was something off about him. And then we found out. Dude just started spitting on the ground by people's feet. Just randomly. Just hawk spit right on the floor, right next to people's feet. Then he started doing it, and people just started moving away, and some people moved different cars. We weren't going to do that. We just sat there. And he just kept doing it. Eventually, he started spitting around me and my wife's feet. At this point, those Red Hulk urges began to boil up in me, and I was getting very, very aggravated at this individual who just kept spitting on the floor. And he aimed his spit to a point where you could tell that he was moving closer, where like he definitely had the range to hit anybody he wanted to from where he was sitting. And he would spit, and then he'd spit a little closer to you. And then he'd spit a little closer still. And he kept doing it to the point where it was probably a quarter inch away from me. And then one time it got around a half inch away from my wife's foot. And at this point, my initial mentality was, well, he's about to find out what a roundhouse kick feels like. And at this point in time, I was ready. And the sad part about it was almost like he wanted somebody to do something to him. And I almost, I almost acquiesced his request. I almost did. I thought about it real hard. And just as I was really thinking about getting into position to give him a roundhouse kick, our stop showed up. My wife grabbed me and said, "Let's go." And I looked at him one last time, and then I just left. I will honestly have to say, from that perspective, he was in a right position where I didn't even have to use full extension on a roundhouse because he was sitting. He was absolutely sitting. So I could have generated a lot of power real quick, knocked him completely unconscious. Went around. He was right there and begging for it. Would have been a very low kick, and it would have come really fast. It wouldn't have had to have any extra elevation whatsoever. And I had to just got him right in the temple. Out. But fortunately, our stop came. Now, would I have been patient enough and cool-headed enough to have avoided that situation if our stop wasn't then, but was the stop after that? I don't really know. And I'll admit it, I'm not a shoe guy. I've never been a sneakerhead. Granted, last year or so, I did buy a couple of really cool, what I like to call personal throwback shoes. Bought 3 pairs of British Knights. I love these things. A red pair, a black pair, and a gray pair I got from my wife. She gave me the gray and the red, and I bought the black pair. And I was thinking about buying a blue pair. Still might. But that's sort of a nostalgic, sort of feel-good sort of shoe that I have that I like. I'm not one of those Nike guys. And my general philosophy of shoes is they are simply meant to keep poop and glass off of your feet. So it wouldn't have been because he hit me with the spit on my shoe that I would have kicked him. It was the idea that he was playing a game and he was trying to get on my nerves. And spitting on someone is one of the most disgusting things you can ever do. So it wouldn't have been about him spitting on my shoe. It would have been about him spitting, period. And that would have been the problem that I would have solved. But fortunately for him and me, I didn't have to solve that problem. Good old Septa. Now I'll tell you one from when I was there, when I was working. Now initially, I put in the application and I got hired for the training program. And I pretty much breezed through the initial test, the entrance exam, and the CDL tests. Those were easy for me. God knows, the written test for the CDL, I blew it out real quick. Admittedly, I also passed the which one was it that I had passed? The passenger endorsement test, first shot. Now, I was off by one question on the air brakes, and I just took it the next day. They told me to just come back the next day, and I took it. And I did. And because of that, I realized, you know what, maybe this is so tempting. I thought about taking the test for hazardous material when I was there. And I'm like, I don't really want to take that. Oh, excuse me. Now, it had nothing to do with driving a bus. And I had already completed what I had to complete by getting all those, the passenger endorsement, the air brakes, and the general CDL test taken. And so I did all that, and I get ready to start. We do the orientation and all that good stuff, and now it's time for us to get in the bus. So the day one, first time we're on a bus. Now the SEPTA management trainer who was with us took us out, and we just sort of essentially felt out the bus a little bit. We just spun it, took it a little, we hit a few corners here and there, and typically drove. Now, admittedly, his point made sense, and I understood it completely. He said that he wasn't supposed to teach us how to drive. He was simply showing us how to drive the way that SEPTA and CDL people are supposed to drive. This is a little different. You have to pay attention to mirrors a little bit differently. You can't look at a rear view mirror and expect to see the cars behind you in the bus, because there is no back window in the bus. So you have to rely on those two side mirrors big time. And as he's saying that, the group that I was with in my training class was very interesting. And it was very, very interesting indeed. There were 3 of us, and we were all at various levels of ability to drive. We'll start at the top, work our way down. The top was this lady who actually had her CDL Class A license, meaning that she drove tractor trailers before she came to SEPTA. So she already had her CDL and the air brake and all that stuff, because that's what she did. She drove trucks, so it wasn't a big deal. Me, I had just been driving for years. Regular cars, trucks, like as far as pickup trucks. That's where my experience was. And the third person in our group, he didn't have his license of any kind until he applied for SEPTA. Then he went and got his driver's license and was now ready to try to get a CDL. That was his whole purpose. He got his driver's license so that he could get a CDL so he could drive the bus. And he did it all pretty quickly. So he was a rather novice driver. And that is the reason why the trainer had specifically told us that he's not there to show us how to drive, but he's trying to show us where and how to react to how to use a bus. Like, I mean, and the guy who was with us, like I said, he literally just got his license, and he didn't even have a car. Yeah, he rented. He got his license from what do you call it? The vehicle he used for his license was with the service that he used in order for training. So he didn't have, except for maybe, you could put his driving experience in hours. Now, only because I was a little older than the other lady who was in our group, my driving experience was in years. Hers was also in years, with a few less, but she also had CDL, so she had more experience driving bigger vehicles. And this is where the story comes in. It took me a long way to get to this, but on that first day that we were out taking a few corners in the bus, we go down to South Philly, of all places, and it's the lady who has the CDL, who is a truck driver, and she's at the wheel. And we're about to try to make a turn. I gotta envision this myself right now. It was a right turn. I don't exactly remember where we were going in South Philly, but I know we were in South Philly, and she was making a right turn. And there was a small Ford Ranger, which is a small pickup truck, that was on the other side in the traffic. When she made that right, she sideswiped the Ranger. Ouch, right? The very first day, one of us in our training class gets into an accident with a bus. The first day. How crazy is that, right? Day one, accident on the bus. I'm thinking to myself, boy, I've never driven a bus at this point. She was the first one behind the wheel, and she had already driven a tractor trailer. And in my mind, I'm thinking to myself, boy, if this lady was driving tractor trailers for a while before she got here, and her very first time in the bus, she hit something, man, do I have any chance at all at this? And I'm like, if she did that, I know the dude back there who's only been driving maybe 60 hours, 70 hours total. Not even a week of total time if you add it up, how long he was sitting in a seat of a car. He's got no chance. When he gets in there, we're going to fall off a bridge or something. I don't know how that's going to go. I was not feeling real confident at that point in time. But it turns out that after we actually passed our CDL test, and yeah, the other gentleman, he did pass on his third try, fortunately for him. We then continued to move on, and I think the whole training period was 6 weeks. And even after that, during that training period, I believe that other gentleman, he ended up getting cut from the program after week 4 or 5. He didn't get all the way to the end. Not to say that I did either, but the reason was definitely different for me and him. And it's very, very interesting how that all came out, because I ended up leaving because of the scheduling. I just had an issue with gaps in my work. I'm the kind of person who likes to go into a job, clock in, do the job, and then go home. Even if I'm there for overtime, I still want to be able to clock in, do the job, stay longer, and then go home. But continuously work. There were huge gaps that happen when you drive for Septa, where you can drive for a while, then you might have to drive a different route, then you might have to have, there's going to be time in between, like a couple of hours between the time you go from one bus route to another bus route. And I know that, me personally, I have that sort of motor where I'll go, but when I stop, I'm done. I know that. And towards the end of that 6 week, I think it was like week 5, the end of week 6, I was just like, I don't think I'm going to be able to do that. And so I bowed out gracefully. And so the point of this story is the one person who actually made it through in my training class was the person who got into the accident her first time driving the bus. How crazy is that? You get in the bus, the first thing you do is you get into an accident, and you're the one who actually makes it through. How about that? Let that sink in. Just let that sink in. Let's see. Riding the bus again. This time, instead of being on the elevated trains, I'm down in the subway, getting ready to take the trolley home from work. And this one is probably one that most people would probably gasp at because, well, down below in the in the subway area, there are certain things that exist that are real. Now, one of the things that's very interesting is I was waiting and I was just sort of minding my own business, like I always try to do, just in general. And I started seeing these people stare, and this one lady screamed real quick. And I'm like, what is that? What's going on here? And I go and I look, and I see what they were looking at. What were they looking at? What was that lady screaming about? Well, the answer is down in the Septa subway area, there was a rat that was probably bigger than my cat Phoenix now. Easily. I mean, this thing was gigantic. Now we're talking about huge. If you ever watched The Princess Bride, one of my favorite creatures in that whole movie is a creature called the ROUS. And that is rodent of unusual size. This is clearly an ROUS. There's no doubt about it. This thing was definitely a rodent of unusual size. When I saw this, now this is back early in the days of the picture phones. And the fact that I'm calling it a picture phone should tell you how early it was. I saw this one lady, the one that screamed, she went and she grabbed her camera phone and she took a picture of this thing. And I'm looking at this monster and I'm thinking to myself, my goodness, I'm waiting for 4 turtles to follow it because clearly this is Master Splinter. That's how big this thing is. There's no doubt about it. It's like, hey Leo, hey Donnie, Mikey, Raph, I know you're down there and your master is right here. Apparently he's trying to find a good place to train you guys for the moment. Something different. And I know there was a pizza place not too far away from that spot where we're at, so maybe he was trying to scout the pizza place for the Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles to go, because this rat clearly was Master Splinter. He was that big. The only thing he didn't do is he didn't talk to any of us, but the size of that thing, he probably could have talked. And I wouldn't have been surprised in any way. At all. Big, big, big rat. I'm not kidding you. The thing had to be at least 2 feet big, 2 feet long. It was gigantic. It really was. And that's why the only thing I could do is call it Master Splinter. No question. Monstrous, monstrous, monstrous rat. Well, now we're going to move back towards working at Septa. Notice how I told you how we had the incident with that one lady who actually hit a bus. We were in the bus and hit a little ranger on the way. Now, we drove all the different types of buses we were doing a training. Your regular size 40-foot buses that you see pretty much everywhere. And then there's two other types of buses that were available when I was training. The electric buses weren't there yet. What I got to see was we drove a bus type that was called a Champion. Now, the difference between Champions and your regular buses there's a lot of difference. Your regular buses, like I said, they're 40 feet long, like 45 if you pull down the bike rack in front. And these things, they move in a certain way and they move comfortably. And I don't know if anybody really pays attention, but some people do. If you're on it, you'll feel it. If you're watching it, you can see it. But when you're on a bus, it has a tendency to lean left and right, just based on the body configuration. That's what they do. They lean a little bit left and right. Now, Champions are smaller buses. These things are about 20 feet long. And the deal with them is they are way, 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 way different than the other buses. You might say, well, yeah, extra 20 feet makes a difference. Oh, it does. And most of the time, those buses are in areas where there is tight streets and a lot of hills in the area where those are at. And boy, those buses are probably the hardest buses to drive, in my opinion. Why? Because of their size, yes. And because, like I said, the other buses, the 40-foot ones and the bigger ones, they have a tendency to have a body lean that goes side to side, left to right. Now, the Champions, on the other hand, have a really uncomfortable body lean. And considering that most of the places where those Champions are, they would be on hills. A lot of hilly areas where those Champions would usually go because they're like tight areas and there's a lot of hills. And what made those Champions, and that was a long day driving that thing because, like I said, instead of going leaning left to right like they do, these Champions, their body lean is forward and back. Yeah, that's uncomfortable as anything. You're in a bus 20 feet long, bigger than most of the vehicles around you. It's not the big bus, but you could be going downhill, which we did, and then you stop, and then it would do its body lean. And that makes you feel uncomfortable because even though your foot's on the brake, the entire vehicle moves forward and then it moves back again. And it's a little unnerving, especially when there's a car in front of you, when this bus goes forward, back for a couple seconds. You hold that brake a little extra tight because of that weird body lean. It makes it so that you're in your mind, you want to stop a little farther back away from the car in front of you because you just feel like it's going to hit the car in front of you. But it doesn't. It's just uncomfortable how that works. And man, that body lean on those buses were just, they're insane. And then the other guys, which are the articulated buses, or we call them Artics. Some people have called them rubber band buses or double buses. They're the really long ones that have an articulation in the middle, where there's a spot where you can see where the whole thing can almost accordion-like, where it moves. And those buses are 60 feet long. Now, personally, when I was driving those, it actually felt a little more comfortable to drive that than it did the Champion, for sure. Because, granted, it is definitely pushing the whole thing forward because of where the engine is. And you hardly feel the body lean in that. And this is where the story comes in. We were driving one of those Arctics, as they call them, and in the process, we were cruising down the road, and we were on a one-way street. And it was the gentleman who had just gotten his license, the newest driver there. It was only, like I said, he had maybe 70 hours in any chair of any vehicle up until that point. And he was cruising down the road in this big articulated bus and on a one-way street. And what was in front of us but the most ridiculous sight in the world? Some guy decided to drive the wrong way on the one way, and he got directly in front of us. And when he realized it, he stopped, he smiled, he waved, and then he turned around. And the thing that made me really feel that that guy must have been day drinking was the fact that not only did he turn down the wrong way street, but he stopped directly in front of this 60-foot bus while he was driving a very particular vehicle. And hand on a dump truck full of Bibles, this guy was driving a smart car. Yeah. His entire car would fit inside the driver's area of the bus. But he was okay with just running straight ahead on a wrong way street into a 60-foot bus. I don't know. Some people are just strange like that. And like I said, he was right there and he waved at us, and then he backed up and drove away. I don't get people. I don't get them. I just don't. Let's move towards me riding the bus again. Now, there was a point where after we got married, I ended up having my car stolen, and I had to take Septa again in order to get to Pep Boys that I worked at. And it required me to take two buses to get there. Yeah, 2 buses to get there. And on the way back, it would be the same. And it was a nice long trip. Got plenty of time to think, and it wasn't bad. It really wasn't. But this particular day, I've told this story a bunch, but it fits here really good, where I ran into a guy when I was on my way home, and I was waiting for that second bus to get home. And this guy is sitting there, and it was a Sunday, so of course on Sundays the bus schedule's a little different, so you gotta wait a little longer on weekends than you do on a weekday. And I ran into this guy whose birthday it was, and we started talking, and my man told me most of his life story. Told me about the fact that he was going to go see his girlfriend on his birthday, and she had cooked for him, and how he was super excited about it. And I was like, okay. He was so excited that he decided to tell a total stranger every single thing that he was going to do. And I listened to him because typically I'm the person who gets talked to very frequently by people who have never met me up until that point. And I just sort of got used to it. And, well, what's one more guy telling me his life story, right? But this time, it was at Septa at their stop on the ground. I'm not above ground this time, and I'm not underground. I'm actually on the street level, waiting for the bus. And of course, this guy had more than enough time to tell me everything he was going to do. Like the entire trip, for me waiting for him to tell me this, was a good half hour we were waiting. And he told me everything. And I was like, well, I hope you have a good birthday. In fact, I believe it was that next year on Facebook when it showed up, I actually posted a happy birthday to that guy. Why not? I'm going to say right now it's been about, wow, it's almost been 20 years since that day. It's interesting. It almost has. And his birthday, I guess it was in late April, I believe it was. Somewhere between late April and early June. Because it was warm. I remember that. But that was a really fun story that he told. Let's go to one more, maybe. What do I got? Working for Septa at the time. A very interesting thing that occurred with every single manager that I had encountered while working for Septa. They all had the story of stories, and it's only the management who told us this, not the other drivers who were available, but just the managers. And I mean, every manager that I spoke to, not just the manager who was the trainer that I was working with, but 3 other trainers that I spoke with had these very same types of stories, different stories. And then the guy who was the head training manager also had a story very similar to this. Now, as somebody who was a manager at the time at Wawa prior to working at Septa, I was confused because at that point in time, I understood what management was supposed to be and how you were supposed to manage. And in fact, I believe it's next week. Yeah. Spoiler alert. Next week, I'm going to do an entire show about the things I learned becoming a manager and a leader. It's going to be the whole episode. Next week's going to be about managing and leading. I think that'll be a fun one. I really almost switched it to this week. In fact, I really almost switched it for 2 weeks prior to this because I was so excited about the episode. But you'll get that episode next week. But what these managers did made me really, really, another thing that made me consider, do I really want to work here? Like I said, yeah. I had submission training and some striking and wrestler that I was. But every manager told me that they had been in at least 2 or 3 good fights. And they all described him. My favorite one of those managers who told me about his fights, his fight was insane, and I can't even understand how, and he couldn't even understand how he was still standing there with us, because in the fight that he had, first of all, he broke all of his knuckles, which of course was not a fun thing. You could see his hand was unusually weird because his knuckles were all broken because of the fight. He ended up in a situation, and I'm going to simply paraphrase this because this is now, for me telling you, this is secondhand information that I'm giving you. He fought off a guy who was on his bus, which is, to me, I don't understand. Even in a jail, if I didn't have to fight somebody, which fortunately I never had to, I wouldn't have. You know, this is just some dude out on the street. And he was trying something. Like, it was about money as far as paying for the ride. And like, why are you going to fight some dude about the money that he didn't want to pay? In fact, they told us back when I was originally training, our job on the bus as the driver is to request and accept. Request and accept. But now Septa is doing some weird stuff where it seems like they're almost out of money, every time you think about it, maybe the request and accept isn't the policy that they went with. I digress. What does that mean? Simply, what they wanted us to do is, of course, I like to say it was the secret of Septa. If you knew this, most people would probably ride for free. But that was back then. What request and accept means is just that. Request for them to pay and take the money. Now, if you request and they deny, you just keep on going. That's all they said, because all it's going to do is cause a problem. Because if you don't drive the bus, all the people who are already on the bus are going to be late to wherever they're supposed to go. If the person refuses to get off, there's ways to get them off. You could set the little thing in the front of the bus that tells you what route you're on and where you're going. You could set that up so that you can have the police notified and nobody's the wiser. And eventually you see the police, they'll look up and they'll see that little sign. I can't remember what there was. Was there one that said, it's been so long? I saw one maybe a year or two ago on a bus where it said, call 911, or was it call the police, one of those two. And the police will see it and you'll stop and they'll just get on the bus and they'll remove whoever you need removed. That's how that usually works. So I don't understand why there's a need to fight, but especially over the money. But this guy ended up doing it. He pulled over. He ended up fighting the guy who was being the issue. And then the police came to try to break it up because he set up the sign. And in the process of fighting off the guy, he ended up hitting a police officer. Like, that makes a lot of sense. Just go ahead and hit a police officer. And of course, when he did it, he's like, oh no, I can't believe I just hit the guys that I was trying to call to stop me from to take care of this individual. But now I'm attacking them. Oh man, I'm so going to jail. But fortunately for him, it worked out where they sorted it all out and he didn't get arrested. They put him in cuffs for a little while because they wanted him to calm down. And after that, they understood the situation. It was in the middle of a fight. And he couldn't tell if it was a police officer or who it was that was coming after him from the back. And the police officer let it slide. Again, I believe he lucked out. Boy. The Southeastern Pennsylvania Transit Authority. A lot of stuff happens, and those are just the things that I experienced and I've found while dealing with Septa here in Philadelphia. But again, I mean, there is two things that I would have to say that make me wonder if I made the right decision about leaving Septa. But in the long run, I did what I did. Turns out that they went on strike several times, and every time they went on strike, it was about money. So they all got raises after every strike. And since I left, it would have been 10, been a while, hasn't it? Would have been 18 years if I had continued to work there. I'd have been working at Septa for 18 years. And to my knowledge, I know they just went on strike recently. I probably would have been a part of somewhere in the neighborhood of 4 or 5 strikes, plus regular raises. I'd have been making a stupid amount of money. Really would have. But would it have been worth it for my mental sanity? Getting in fights, dodging bullets occasionally, fighting with everybody that's going around. I think I was better off in jail. Sorry. I'm pretty sure I was better off working in the jail than having to be at Septa for 18 years. Because my favorite thing to tell police officers when I talk to them and tell them that I used to be a corrections officer is I would tell them, yeah, I wouldn't want to do your job. And they would tell me that they wouldn't want to do my job. And I would always follow up and say, well, at least I know who my bad guys are. I know the guys who were wearing brown were the bad guys. They're the inmates. I know they're trying to do bad things. Now, you're walking down the street and you have no idea if grandma has a Glock in her purse. You have no idea. But at least I know that inmate, he probably has a shank on him. He probably does. And by knowing that, I keep that in mind. It's simple. But having said that, those are some of my best and favorite fun stories that I experienced while working with and riding on Septa. And like I said before, there's probably one more story that I think is noteworthy, but I like YouTube, and it seems like I have a handful of people who listen to the show, and I'm certain that if I were to tell that story, YouTube would flag me and I would have some sort of issues. I'm convinced of it. Convinced. But like I said, you can DM me on Instagram and or Facebook to the Facebook group, and I'll maybe be willing to tell you that story. But my goodness, that story, yeah, it's a fun one, I think. But like I said, they wouldn't want me to tell that here, and I'm not going to do so. But remember, kind of going into the end spiel, and I haven't rang the bell. So I'll ring the bell now. Now let me finish that whole little thing. I'll go to that at the end. Bell's been rung, main event is over, and let's get to the final parts of the business here, huh? It's safe to say that the spear of the week, if I had to pick one, and there are plenty to pick from, I would say that I would spear the work schedule at Septa. It just wasn't for me. I couldn't do a 3-hour break in the middle of a shift. I just couldn't, because I wouldn't be able to get the gears running and going again and be able to function with that kind of time in between. I couldn't do it. The Septa work schedule is the spear of the week. But now, it's time for my football picks. Yeah, my football picks. Yeah, lean up a little bit because I don't remember where I put my running total, which is a problem. I had it somewhere. Put on the back of one of these. Yeah, here it is. Running total from last year. I almost lost my mind. But we're not going to go into that too far. Alright, week 9. Week 9 was a bit more. Wait a minute. Hit that one right? I got that one right. Yeah, that's a win. Yep. Week 4 was better. Well, week 9 was better than week 8. I ended up 3-2, a winning week. 49ers beat the Giants like I expected, 34-24. I was a little off at Minnesota. I thought they were going to actually that they were going to lose to the Lions, but that didn't happen. Minnesota won 27-24. I was right about the Broncos, wrong about the score. Um, the difference in the score was right as well. I said 27-24, 3-point swing, but the Broncos actually won over the Texans 18-15. So I did in fact get the 3 points right. It's kind of neat. Bills and Chiefs. I thought the Chiefs may have been a little bit back on their business. I was wrong. I said 35-30 Chiefs, and it actually ended up being 28-21 Bills. I'm not upset about that. Now, the one I am a little upset about is I kind of predicted that because Jaden was injured earlier, that he was going to still be hurt against the Seahawks, and I thought the Seahawks were going to win 24-21. I didn't know that Jaden Daniels was going to come back, but it didn't make any difference. Commanders still did in fact lose, and I won my pick 24. Was it 38-14, and Jaden Daniels got hurt. But I will have to just say this: I need to go into a soliloquy about this before I continue on my other 2 weeks. Well, Cincinnati Bengals are the worst team in the NFL, bar none. Period. I just needed to say that. Sorry, Chad Ochocinco. Your Bengals are garbage. Straight up garbage. And I have one way to put it, and it's so embarrassing to say it this way, and I thought about it, and after I realized this, I paid attention to all the other games, and I had a good, long, hard belly laugh when I thought about it. And this is what it is. Did you know that in Week 9, the Cincinnati Bengals, had they had their score against any other team that had played in Week 9, the Bengals win. The Bengals beat every single team in the NFL that played in Week 9 with the score that they had, except for one. Only one team, the Bengals, did not outscore. And unfortunately, it was the most important team. The Bengals outscored everybody except for the team they are playing. Yeah. Think about that. They outscored every other team. Every other team. And in some cases, like the Broncos versus the Texans, the Broncos and Texans combined for 133 points between both teams. And I think there was another game that they did that they scored less than 40 points. The Bengals scored 42 points. They had enough points to beat every single team on this list. Everyone, except for the team they played. The Bears got beat. They beat them by scoring 47. So think about that. They gave up 47 points. And that's just, it's ridiculous. They gave up more points, enough to lose. How do you lose when you win? When you score 42 points, you're not supposed to lose. You're just not. You're not. And like I said, every other team that played in Week 9 would have lost had they played the Bengals with the score that the Bengals had. None of those other teams scored 42 points. In fact, none of them scored, I think, the 49ers might have won the higher scores, 34. But, my goodness, how awful is that? The Bengals, not the Bengals, who was it? The Seahawks, they scored 38 against the Commanders, and they would not have beaten the Bengals. They wouldn't have beaten the Bengals. But, of course, that just tells me that based on how pitiful the Bengals were, I mean, giving up 47 points, I would say that as much as I hate the Seahawks, it's safe to say that the Seahawks would have probably scored 76 points against the pathetic Bengals. The way they gave up those points, man, it's just unbelievable. There was no, the whole scenario saying defense was optional. No, defense did not exist. I know I'm a little off topic here, but I have to go there because that was just so funny to me. It's literally like the Chicago Bears decided to leave their defense back in Chicago, and the Cincinnati Bengals told their defense to stay in the locker room. It was that bad. But now, let me finish my picks while I still have time to finish them, right? Week 10. I have the Patriots beating the Bucks 28-14. The Ravens beating the Vikings. I'm going to go Ravens over the Vikings. 24-20. Detroit gets back on their winning ways. Now Jaden Daniels is hurt. I have the Lions 35, the Commanders 27. 49ers versus the Rams. This time it's at Santa Clara. The 49ers will beat them, I believe, 23-17. The Packers should go over the Eagles. I'm pretty sure the Packers have a better defense than the Eagles do. I'm expecting this thing to go 30-21 Packers. That's my week 10. Week 11, I have the Patriots rolling over the Jets 35-10. The Commanders, I originally thought that they were going to be able to win against the Dolphins, and I think they can because the Dolphins are probably the second worst team in the NFL. So I see 16 Commanders, Dolphins 13. Bears, they're looking like to me, I think they could win their division. Sorry, Detroit. I think the Bears are the best team in the NFC North, and I like the Bears to defeat Minnesota 28-21. Tampa Bay versus the Bills. Well, the Bills are back in town. The Bills are back in town. I like the Bills winning 35-28. Of course, some people might get that reference, but not quite. 49ers will beat the Cardinals 27-21. That's week 11. 49ers over the Cardinals. Bills over the Bucks. Bears over the Vikings. Commanders beat the Dolphins. And Patriots will beat the Jets week 11. Week 10, one more time, I said Patriots beat the Bucks. Ravens are going to beat the Vikings. Commanders will lose to the Lions. 49ers beat the Rams. And Packers will beat the Eagles. So far, my total of the season is 26 wins, 19 losses. That ain't bad. Pretty good at this, especially since I have to use the crystal ball because I'm picking up 2 weeks in advance for my last pick. So just hope nobody gets hurt. Hope the trade deadline works in my benefit. That's all I can say. Now, it's time to start putting the show down, closing it up. I already told you where you should be able to find me on Instagram at PhilipHenderson5102. And like I said, check me out, inbox me, and I might be able to tell you that story. I probably will tell you that story if you inbox me. A Facebook group, join us. There is always room for one more member on our Facebook group, the LIP Facebook group. Join us. Subscribe to the YouTube channel at Phil the Lip. We could definitely use as many subscribers as possible. Getting there. I'm getting there. I want to make sure that when I decide to put together the Lip Media Productions, that we have a nice little base going for us in our subscription base. Be a good thing. Really would. And on that note, I'm going to give you the words of wisdom. And the words of wisdom this week are pretty simple. When you see the bus coming and you know you need to get on it, make sure the driver can see you. Because if you don't, that bus is going to pass you by. Now, one more time, make sure if you're getting ready to get on the bus and you see the bus coming, make sure the driver sees you or he will pass you by. Now, that has implications, if you really think about it, that go deeper than just riding the bus. That could be opportunity coming your way, and you need to get on it. Last thing you want to do is see that opportunity go past you and then disappear in the distance. Go get it. Thus, my passion for what is going to be the Lip Media Productions, which you are watching a broadcast of right now. My name is Phil, and you've just listened to The Lip.